Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you tonight. And if I remember correctly, there's a rule in Hollywood about not trying to follow someone who got a standing ovation. So I want to, as well as I can, present to you something a little different. You grew up with this map. You've seen it 1,000 times. It's been on classroom walls, it's on office walls, it's in hallways. The media uses this type of map when they try to show you where something is occurring. Well, it's a human map. We drew this map. So it's human artifice. It's the way we see this world most of the time. It's the way we see this planet. Yeah, but nature has a different map, many maps. This is just one of them. This is the Earth's fractured surface, although in reality a lot of it's covered by water, which I'll get to in a minute because therein lies the tsunami problem. But this is one of the maps that if nature were a person, nature would say, hey, this is my map. It shows spreading centers and it shows fault structures. Look at the circum-Pacific belt from Chile all the way around to New Zealand. But pay attention also to the lines that run through the Mediterranean. Now let's layer this thing. Let's put volcanic activity on that map. And this is volcanic activity just since 1970. And you don't want to be anywhere near, or would not have wanted to be anywhere near, those big red triangles, because those big red triangles carry the 1,000 or more people killed. But please see the big picture. See the pattern. Disasters are not randomly distributed. Disasters, this kind of disaster in particular, follows the fractures. And speaking of the fractures, now let's add earthquakes. And we go back to 2150 BC for this historical record and paleo records. But pay attention also to, again, the pattern, the distribution. They're not random. And again, you don't want to be anywhere near those big, bright red dots. Those, again, are events with 1,000 or more killed, either recorded or estimated. Now, before you start looking for real estate in North Dakota, or, you know, South Dakota, which I'm sure are lovely. Just keep in mind that we haven't put in droughts and floods, blizzards, you know, blizzards, North Dakota. So we live with these hazards. They're really all around us, but I want you to take away one thing. They're distributed in patterns. Tsunami. Most tsunamis are generated by earthquakes offshore. We've had some terrible ones, 2004 in Asia. But again, notice the distribution, notice the pattern distribution. And in this business, one tries to grab a little humor where one can. You don't want to be in any of those areas with those very tall yellow bars. Those are wave heights. So again, look at the concentrations, but look at the patterns. And you can find us. Actually, you can find us even more easily with cyclones. Cyclones and typhoons in the Pacific, hurricanes in the Western Hemisphere. We didn't put this on the previous slide with the other hazards because we ran out of space, except for the North Dakota. Yeah. But when you look at the way the hazard is distributed, you see there's actually, in many ways, much more to worry about in Asia. That's where they have typhoons and cyclones that kill tens of thousands at a time. Our part of the world, it's a little thinner. Nonetheless, we all know that we watch the west coast of Africa very carefully, starting around May, June every year. Everybody who lives here knows that. We've lost about 1.1 million people, and I'm doing plus or minus because the figure's a little difficult to pin down. We've had about 1.1 million people killed in natural disasters, and I'll quibble with that in a minute, just in the last decade. It may come as a shock to you, but not all governments tell the truth all the time. Some governments, when they have a disaster, lie upwards about the numbers killed, and some governments lie downwards in order to preserve the image that everything is okay. These are violent deaths. This is no way to go. This is unacceptable. Sandy, just before it took its left turn into New Jersey, New York, and really the sort of mid-Atlantic up to New England, when Sandy had its full impact, it affected every state in the United States east of the Mississippi. These are the scales of events that we deal with. And we all know what the death toll on Sandy is up over 100, and they're talking $50 billion in damage. This was one of my storms. This was actually the year I came to Florida International University. I'm not responsible for this. Hurricane Mitch, a mean Category 5, and this was the picture just before it made its hard left turn into Honduras, into Central America. It ate Honduras. We couldn't see Honduras for 3 days. But even when it was still out to sea, the effects went from Cuba, Jamaica, into Nicaragua, down even to Costa Rica, and up into Mexico. When Mitch came in and settled over Honduras, it cut the capital, Tegucigalpa, off from the rest of the country. And it cut Tegucigalpa in half. And Tegucigalpa was supposed to be the city, it's the capital, that was to help respond to the disaster and send assistance and coordinate assistance to the rest of the country. When Tegucigalpa went down, essentially response went down. You lose a city like Tegucigalpa, you tend to lose the rest of the country for a while. Scale of event. This is the El Nino, one of the worst and most intense El Ninos in decades. This was the 97-98 El Nino, and I wasn't responsible for that one either when I came to FIU. The red, those are water temperatures, and I want you to look at the red, the hot water, the warm water that was banging up against the west coast of South America. And at that time, it created floods and mudslides. They're called huaicos in Peru. Floods in Ecuador, damaging weather in Chile, drought and famine in Bolivia, and all the way up into Central America and Mexico. These are the scales of the hazards that we're dealing with and we're going to be dealing with increasingly. And then there's the Haiti earthquake. Okay. The image, and it's the truth, most earthquakes affect the housing of the poor. But I want you to pay attention to the lower right-hand side, because that is also, those are structural failures of major buildings. Hundreds of people will go down and die in those buildings. These are not homes of the poor. These are very, very important structures in most cities. And this is the kind of structural collapse that I'm very concerned about recurring, because we have many of these buildings throughout the world. Oh, and then there's us. Population of the planet in 1927 was 2 billion. The little red dots are 1 billion or 1 million people, but they don't stack on top of each other, so you don't even get the intensity. But 1999, we passed 6 billion. And that's what we're going to look like in 2050. We're going to be at 9 billion, and we're going to be rather intensely concentrated. Oh, concentrated. Let me give you some examples of mega cities that I worry about, all of which have disaster histories. Tokyo, Yokohama, Japan, 1900 had about 1.5 million people. In 2010, about 33 million. Now, they're in much better shape. The Japanese are much more proactive, but we're still talking about packing in more than 30 million people into that area. Lima, Callao, Peru, which dominates the country, in 1900 had about 200,000 people, more or less, but in 2010 it passed 9 million. 800,000 of them in an area that was affected by tsunamis at least twice in recorded history. Istanbul, Turkey, at the close of the Ottoman Empire, 1900, had about 1 million people. In 2010, it passed 13 million. These are megacity concentrations. So not only are we expanding the population, we all know that, but we're putting millions of people in mega cities. And if the selection of cities seems coincidental, Tokyo, Yokohama, Lima, Callao, and Istanbul. But I could pick Los Angeles, San Francisco, Wellington, New Zealand, which has a fault running right underneath the city. We have dozens and dozens of these. So I want to quibble. Natural disasters, it trips off the tongue. We say it too easily. I want to change the inflection. Natural disasters? Not so much. Natural events, yes. Nature provides those. But the disasters, what we put in harm's way, ourselves, our societies, our economies, well, that's on us. So you change the inflection to natural disasters? I'm sorry, there are no such things. I will buy events, but I will not automatically buy natural disasters. Next time you hear the word, and we use it, I still use it, I sin like everybody else. I want you to just take a pause and say, well, okay, we're going to use the term, but I know better. Because after this, I think you do know better. So what's the 21st century imperative? I have 3 rules. Actually, that's a trick. I have 1 rule that I'm repeating 3 times. Decentralize, decentralize, decentralize. We have to create, we've got to spread ourselves out, spread the risk out. We need to create national tiers of second cities. They need to be safer. They need to be vital, vigorous. They're healthy. Countries are healthier if they have multiple cities. I have a practical reason for saying this as well. But if you think about second cities, it's a way to counteract, to escape first city dominances. In many countries, if you lose the lead city, the country goes down. If you lose the capital, if it dominates the country, socially, economically, and politically, the country goes down. Second cities, the approach of second cities would spread the risk. Multiple second cities around the country with mutual assistance possibilities. They could help the capital, they can help each other, they can help a lead city, but the idea would be to spread the risk. The end result would be to increase national resilience. Look, we're going to take some terrible hits. We're going to have emergencies, we're going to have disasters, but I would like us to step back and see if we can develop second cities so we don't have catastrophes. If we don't commit to this, our children and grandchildren, and okay, in my case, great-grandchildren, are going to say, when they take these hits, what was our generation, what were we thinking? And if we don't do this, the answer is going to be apparently not much. So when you look at population expansion, when you look at concentrations, when you look at hazard dispersals, we're going to be hit with events. The fact that what our exposures, what we do, what we put in harm's way, that's what makes them disasters. And in worst case scenario, catastrophes. And I've had enough. I want to back us off from catastrophes. Thank you very much.